Shirley Bender, and I have the honor to have Karen Crilly here today. Leisure World Library has an author come every month, and last month Karen was the featured speaker talking about her book, The Blue Satin Nightgown, her 2 years in France. And we're here today for her to tell us that story of the time she spent in France, and she went by herself. Karen, can you please tell us what made you go there in the first place?
Okay, hello, thank you, Bev. And hello, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. I thoroughly enjoyed my talk here earlier this summer. I was delighted to be invited by Taylor Green to come and speak at the Authors Club. I was introduced to him by a friend of mine, Bud Morris, who used to live here in Leisure World, and just recently, about 2 weeks ago in fact, moved to Texas. And I just had word from him that he's doing great. Anyway, yes, I took the leap of faith and moved to France in 2012. I had just retired from a career in marriage and family therapy, and had the time to make a long-held dream come true. My husband and I had gone to France on our honeymoon, and as we traveled down from Paris down to Nice, we stopped in this little town called Aix-en-Provence. I'm sure many of you know about it because it's a very popular spot. But in any case, we just fell in love with this little town, and we both said, we'll be back someday. Well, unfortunately, my husband passed on before the time was right for us to go. And so when I retired, I had the time, and I just asked myself the question, well, am I still going to live my dream, or am I going to give up on it because I have to go by myself? And being someone who loves adventure and loves travel, I just said, yes, I'm going for it. And so at 78, I had to divest all of my belongings in order to get what I needed and wanted into 3 large suitcases to move to France.
Let me ask you one thing.
Sure.
Karen, were you discouraged by your children and your friends? Like, how could you go by yourself at your age? Aren't you afraid?
You know, I had no thought of that because everyone was very supportive. There was only one woman who said to me, oh, I admire what you're doing, but I could never do that because I know that I would be lonely if I went by myself. She didn't say she couldn't do it, she just said she would be lonely. But that thought didn't even enter my mind. And the only time it did enter my mind was after I was established in France and I started telling people my story. And they said, oh my goodness, how did you get the courage to do that at 78? But I hadn't thought of it before that, so thank you.
Now, when you got there, you didn't know where you were going to live.
That's right.
So how did you find a place?
I went to a realtor in France that's called an immobilier, and I had quite a time with finding a place for the reason that they do it very differently in France. They, instead of having what we call MLS, where all vacant apartments are on the internet, they have no such thing, and you can only see the apartment that is listed by an agent. So I went to the first one. She showed me something, it was not suitable, so I said to her, now let me see if I understand this right. In order to see every apartment in Aix-en-Provence, I would have to go to every single immobilier in town? And she said, yes, that's right, because we can only show what we list. And so with that, I found another person, and she showed me the apartment that I really, really liked. But I had another, I'm not sure how much detail I should be going into.
Well, we
but
want to go more into when you were there and your experience.
I know,
But
I
we
know.
want to know how you found a place, since you
Okay,
didn't know the
well, the
language.
thing, I just want to give a little bit about the culture by telling you that they said I would have to have a bank account. And I said, oh, no problem, I'll just run right out and get a bank account. Well, nothing doing. It was Friday afternoon, and what I didn't realize that in France, first of all, nothing happens on Friday afternoon, and secondly, one has to, there are certain things you have to get a bank account. So the receptionist made an appointment for me for Monday morning, and I came back at the appointed time, and I brought what I thought were the necessary documents, and when they said, well, where do you live? And I said, well, I live at the Hotel Grand Lacoste on Cour-Mirabeau. And they said, oh, no, you have to have, in order to open a bank account, you have to have a permanent residence. And I said, well, interesting, because in order to have a permanent residence, I have to have a bank account. So what am I to do?
Catch 22.
Yes, catch 22 is right. So at first I was going to be terribly distressed, and then I thought, no, I'm just going to sit here and let them figure it out. And within 5 minutes, actually, they did figure it out. The manager said, I have an idea. If you are willing to take out renter's insurance for a year, we can then open your bank account. So that took care of that. So I got moved into my new place, and the first Friday night, I hear this kaboom, kaboom, kaboom. And I thought, what is that? And it turns out that my beautiful apartment that I just loved was located over a disco. And when I went to complain to the immobilier, she said, well, you signed a contract for it, and there's nothing we can do now. You're there for a year. And it seems that in France, there aren't any disclosure laws. They did not have to disclose the fact that my bedroom would be over a disco that would be playing every Friday and Saturday nights until 2 in the morning. So I stuck it out for about 5 months, and then I found another place that I was very happy with. So
You didn't go down disco on Friday night, huh?
I went down one evening with the idea of somehow negotiating with the owner, and I was so out of my element that I quickly left. And I did talk to him, but he said, well, I have to earn a living, and so I could understand that.
So then how did you get yourself into the culture?
I met a lot of people, and the first thing I did was I signed up for language classes at a language school, and I met people there, and they were promoting a cooking class, and so I went to the cooking class, and it was given by Madame Campestone, who later became my very best friend. And she, at the end of the evening, she said, would you be interested in exchanging language classes? I want to learn more English and you want to learn more French. And so we met every week and became very good friends. And that's how I got involved in the culture. And she introduced me to many people and took me many places. So I did get involved in culture.
And how did you get the title, The Blue Satin Nightgown?
Oh, well, that's a very long story, and I'm thinking maybe viewers might like to read about it in my book, but I do want to read a story from my book. So, by the way, this is my book, and it's available on Amazon.com, and it is a memoir of my 2 years that I lived in France. So, I just want to read this to give you a little taste of my writing style. As the weeks passed by, I realized I was having the adventure of my life. So many things were happening that I could not have imagined in my native country. I became more alive, observing everything new around me. On the way home from a gourmet lunch with new friends held at Pierre Riboul, a starred Michelin restaurant, I was approached by a young Frenchman. He said something to me in French, and this was only after I had been there a few weeks, so I couldn't answer him in French. So I just said, "Parlez-vous anglais?" "I like the way you are dressed," replied the 30-something-year-old man with the sandy red hair and neatly trimmed beard. His blue eyes kept veering towards my legs, as if there was a magnetic pull. "Merci," I said, thanking him. I told him about the luncheon at Pierre Riboul. "Do you know that restaurant?" "No, but I really like the way you are dressed, and especially your stockings." "They are stockings, aren't they?" I looked down at the stockings. I had bought them at Eurodif, a store I usually referred to as the J.C. Penney's of France. They had long black seams up the back. I hadn't seen those in a long time, but I figured it must have been a French thing. Somewhat nervous, I quickly changed the subject and asked if he lived in Aix. "Yes, I live in Aix and work as a journalist." "Oh, what paper or magazine?" "Not any one in particular," he said, as he continued looking at my legs. "I really like your stockings. May I see them?" I thought, "You are seeing them." Clearly, he had something else on his mind, and it wasn't stockings. "Thank you for your interest, but I am old enough to be your grandmother." "Oh, I don't mind that," he winked. "Are you sure you don't have time to show me your stockings?" I muttered, "Put a sock in it," and quickly walked the half block to my home. When I was close to my front door, I turned to see if he had disappeared. He was still standing, watching my stockings. My hose and I walked past my door in case he was a stocking stalker. Oh, how I love this country. At 78 years old, I found a place in the world where I was noticed and not invisible. What a revelation.
I heard that about European men. They don't have the same negative attitude about older women that
They,
American men
no,
have.
they don't, and I didn't realize that at the time I moved over there. I still was pretty well enveloped in my American way of thinking about the youth culture, but it's entirely different over there.
So that was your stockings, and
That
now we
was-
come upon our blue satin nightgown.
Well,
Was that another younger man?
it was a younger man.
I'm ready to leave right now.
Okay, all right. France is a very, very different, the culture is very different. People have asked me, how did I stand those arrogant French people? And I always tell them another story, and that was about a lovely, lovely woman at the post office. My daughter sent a box of clothes to me for winter, because the winter in Aix is very different than the summertime, and I had gone in the late summer, so I didn't have winter clothes with me. So I went to the post office to pick up this package, and it was too large for me to carry. Oh, by the way, I didn't have a car for the whole 2 years I lived in France. I depended on buses or I walked everywhere. So when she came carrying this big box out, I could tell I was not going to be able to manage to walk home with it. So I asked about the possibility of a taxi, and they said no, there were no taxis around there. And so I must have looked rather distressed because the woman, the employee came out from behind her desk or the counter, came out and said, now if you'll go outside and sit on that bench, in 15 minutes I'll be finished with my time at the post office and I can drive you home. I have a car and I'll drive you home. So I just sat there just glowing and being grateful to this lovely lady who was being so generous to me. She didn't know me from Adam. So sure enough, in 15 minutes, out she came carrying my big box, and she indicated where her car was. She carried the box over to her car, put it in the back seat, and drove me home. And not only drove me home, but she took the box out and put it on my front porch. She had to go up some stairs to put it on my front porch. And then when I asked if I could pay her, she just looked very, very insulted and said, oh, heavens no, and she was on her way. I asked my friend Mary Pohl, who I met through the cooking classes, what I should do to show my appreciation of what she had done. And she said, oh, buy her some chocolates. So a few days later, I went back to the post office with a box of chocolates for her. She just beamed. In such gratitude. She just couldn't believe that I would come back with a box of chocolates for her. So it was like I had given her the most expensive present I could. And so anyway, whenever anyone asks me, how do you deal with those arrogant French people, I tell them that story. And also go on to say that the French people are very traditional, and one of the reasons it appears that they're arrogant is that we Americans sometimes forget our manners, and when we go into a shop, we don't say bonjour to begin with, or we don't know to say that because it's not our custom. But in France, nothing happens until you say bonjour or bonsoir if it's late afternoon, or so. And that was brought home to me with another little story. I was rushing into a grocery store one day, and I was cooking something, and I needed a certain ingredient I didn't have, and I didn't know where to find it on the shelf. And so I ran up to this clerk who was stocking the shelf and said, oh, where will I find some breadcrumbs? I need some breadcrumbs. And she just turned around and looked at me and said, bonjour. So as soon as I remembered my manners and said bonjour to her, she was very happy to show me where they were.
So we could learn something from that.
Yes,
Using
yes,
the lost
yeah.
element. Okay, now the blue satin nightgown.
It's a long story. Do you want a long story?
Or can you shorten it?
Yes.
Okay. After Christmas, I was alerted that a friend of a friend was coming to Europe skiing, and I had met this person 25 years prior to him coming to Europe, and he had heard about me coming to Europe through my friend's Christmas newsletter. So he and I started emailing at first, and then we started talking on the telephone, and we arranged to meet in Amsterdam. We were going to be there together for about a week, and so because our phone conversations were getting to be a little intimate and warm, I decided I was going to buy the blue satin nightgown, and so that's how that came about. And it has quite a story. in the book, and it travels from Amsterdam to London to Ireland. So you may want to read about its escapades.
So you did travel to those different countries?
I
right, in
did,
France?
yes I did.
And what advice would you give people who would be afraid to come? Because I think most women, I mean, I know women won't take the metro downtown LA, let alone go to Europe by themselves.
I think one has to have a passion for what they want to do, and with passion comes a huge motivation to do it, and that, for me, that overcame any scare or frightened part of it. So I don't know if that answers your question.
So you would tell people, no matter what their age is, to inspire them to do, put it on their bucket list and do it?
Absolutely I would, because my life there opens so many doors that my life has just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger because of having had that experience, and writing the book has opened so many doors. I would never have met you if I had not written my book and come to Leisure World to talk. So that's just an example of how life continues to grow and be exciting.
And do you have any more trips in plan for the future?
Not to live. I did go back to France in April for a book signing, and I was there for a month, so that was grand. I am going to Iceland, but it's just a short trip, so I don't have any plans at the moment to live in another country.
Well, I really thank you for telling us about this. It's very exciting. That was always been a goal of mine, to go live somewhere. Mine would be Italy for a year. So, but I urge you all to get her book and read it. And who knows? We all live in Leisure World, but let's go live somewhere else for a while by ourselves. And for the women, we may get a younger man. Thank you very much
You're
for
so
spending
welcome.
the time with us. It's been
Thank you
wonderful.
so much for inviting me.